Y'all, what's good? Brad Tay Podcast back at it again. Didn't even realize it until I looked at the score line and the storyline of sports. This is the peak point of the season, and this is the peak point of sports that a lot of people either like or hate. It's all in your personal preference. But nonetheless, this is a part of the year when you kind of get a unique turnout of viewers or viewership. Because sports fans get put in this conflicted decision. And yes, I'm going to talk about more than sports in this podcast. But sports fans get put in this conflicted decision as to, do I watch basketball? Do I watch football? Do I watch college football? Do I watch college basketball? Do I watch NHL? You have multiple sports to choose from. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be unbiased. Do I watch the World Series? Like, you have options of sports to watch at this point of the year. We have, and I'm going to go ahead and get, and it's not that I'm putting it to the side and getting out of the way to be lazy, but it was a big thing. Matter of fact, I'll save that. I'll throw it in the middle because it's the way I do things. Anyway, kind of going to jump into it. A lot of people might be surprised because I made a big move on, start off with my fantasy fiasco. I went ahead and let LaShawn McCoy go. I think I gave him away in a trade, and trade should be cleared on tomorrow. A lot of people are probably going to give me a grief for that, but the truth is I'm kind of in a tough spot, and I didn't know how he was going to be health-wise, so I kind of just made the move that was the best option at the time. I already had Des Bryant gone, so I've kind of, I don't know, it's almost like I've just made it clear that I'm just clearing out my roster, cleaning out my closet. If I've learned nothing else this year from Fantasy League, is to research and learn injuries and learn who's playing what team, and kind of have a generalized overview of what a team may or may not look like as they approach a matchup. So I'm learning to keep that in mind for future reference. It's going to be very helpful towards the future when it comes to how I handle Fantasy League. But this year just was not, and it's not even like I'm using an excuse, because I just was not having a good year to begin with. So it went the way it did, and it is what it is. But that being said, since I always do it every week, I'm kind of jumping a little heavy with it. There wasn't really much football news. And I'm not saying it wasn't football news because Carolina had a bye week. It really wasn't like a big talk of the town. The big shocker, but I kind of picked that game anyway. New England beating Pittsburgh. That was a huge, huge ordeal. Running back for the Dolphins, first running back in a while to, since Ricky Williams, oddly enough, when he played for the Dolphins, to rush for 200 yards in 2 back-to-back games. Only 4 of the running backs have done it. It was OJ. I can't think of the other guy's name. We have Ricky Williams and Avaye. I can't think of. I'm probably messing his name up. If a Dolphins fan is listening, they're probably going to tell me, well, you know it's supposed to be so. So I'll get it right next time. Y'all know me. I'm not doing it on purpose. But anywho, I just wanted to at least get that in there. Going into my weekly picks, I'm kind of mad because I actually had a chance to be above 500 this week. Thanks to the fail of field goals between Seattle and Arizona, I ended up going 7-1. So, because that game ended up being a draw, team just could not finish field goals. Oh, I do have a story. I actually do have a football story. So it looks like Josh Brown was released by the Giants. Roger Goodell mentioned this in the story as well, and it's coincidence since it is October, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. He was involved in a situation involving his wife. Long story short, the NFL is trying everything they can to keep a manageable reputation of how to handle things like this. And it's so tough because a story was presented, and I don't really think it was the best way to present it, but it was presented, so you kind of got to face it, which was how the NFL profiles and how they treat certain athletes. There was the incident with Ray Rice. Ray Rice has been trying to bust his butt to get back into the NFL. Greg Hardy was suspended so many games by the league. And Josh Norman pretty much, in so many words, got a slap on the wrist. It was like they gave him 3. I think they he missed the game and he was released by the Giants, but he has an opportunity to get picked up by another team if they're willing to do so. So we'll see how that all pans out, because it's always an up in the air situation when it's bad. And it's bad to say it this way, but it's literally the way of sports. It's bad when race is involved, when it shouldn't be, but you can't disown it like it doesn't exist, because the truth is athletes get equal treatment in selective situations, and that's the best way to say it. So I just wanted to at least point that story out before I continue with the rest of the podcast. And now to my picks, and I didn't realize, because I wish I could see which jerseys they're referring to. So the NFL picks, the first game of the week, oddly enough, is between Jacksonville and Tennessee. Tennessee is going to be in their all blue, and I think Jacksonville is wearing those horrible mustard gold jerseys, so we'll see how that goes. The best thing I can say for Thursday night games is, if you're colorblind, just don't watch the game. That's my one and only recommendation. But between Jacksonville and Tennessee, it's not really a big pick to go for. Surprise pick by me, taking Jacksonville. Then on Sunday, the international game, I'm assuming they're playing in London as well. Washington at Cincinnati. Gonna go upset with this, going Cincinnati. Jets against Cleveland. Cleveland has yet to win a game. Still think they're keeping that streak alive. Seattle against New Orleans. 4-1-1. That's all I'm gonna say. But I'm gonna take Seattle. New England at Buffalo. New England has yet to lose a divisional game this year, if I'm not mistaken. Forgot. I think because their one loss, I think, was to Oakland. But as far as divisional games, as long as Tom Brady's playing and they're playing in their division, it wouldn't even make sense to pick against the division. So that's where I'm at with them. Green Bay at Atlanta. Surprise pick for me. I'm going to go Atlanta. Oakland at Tampa Bay. Unless something crazy happens, Oakland should be pretty good, even though it's in Tampa Bay. Kansas City at Indianapolis. Kansas City. Detroit at Houston. I promise that I'm a man of my word, because they ruined it for me last week. I will be picking against Houston the rest of the season, and I don't care if that makes me an unbiased fan, and they could win out the rest of the year. Houston lost to Denver, so I'm in my feelings, because I picked them to beat Denver, and they messed up. They had one job. Even though it's in Houston, picking Detroit. San Diego at Denver, going Denver. My boys, Arizona at Carolina. Love y'all, Carolina, but one of my coworkers said this is the year we should come, or this is the time of us coming back. I believe when I see it. I'm gonna go Arizona. Philly at Dallas, Sunday night game. I am shooting this and calling this game of the week. Might make some friends and followers mad, but I'm actually thinking that Philadelphia could pull it off. We'll see what happens. And on Monday night, Minnesota at Chicago. I'm going Minnesota. Minnesota got their wake-up call. Maybe they can turn it around. There's no telling. Chicago's 1-6, so that's where I'm picking Minnesota. And overall, if you're keeping up, I have been writing, and just to kind of give everyone an overview, I have been doing blogs based on the picks that I've made. So I don't want anybody to think, oh, you made your picks and you don't have it somewhere to prove that you said this is a sweet pick. I have all my picks blogged out each week. I have the overall records before, after, and as of that point or whatever. So as of right now, I am currently, like I said, last week I was 7-1. If the Houston game had went the way I expected, or if the Seattle game had went the way I expected, I would be 9-7. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. 8-7 8-6 actually, because I would have won that game. So I would have been 8-6 instead. 7-7-1. Overall, I'm 35-34-1 because it's going soccer style. It's just gonna be what it is for right now. I'm not sure if this was a game last week, but if it was, I'm gonna go ahead and get it in. And matter of fact, it was because the game was played on last Sunday. Jose Mourinho, who is the coach for Man United, he went against his old squad, Chelsea, in Stamford Bridge, and Chelsea made it clear that they were there to play. The score ended up being 3-0, if I'm not mistaken. It was either 3-0 or 4-0, but the game literally there was no recovery for Man U in that game. I mean, they got owned from the pitch, and it was nothing that realistically that they could do about it. It was their game. The only way that Chelsea would have had to lose that game was just conceding random retarded goals for no apparent reason. But the way the game played out, it was just a slaughter fest from start to finish. Chelsea currently in top 6, if I'm not mistaken. It's been quite a mix-up of teams from what we're used to seeing. So always enjoy, giving updates on that. Let's see if I missed anything. Sorry, everyone. It's been a movement of just things back and forth with stories, but yeah. So, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, sorry for the white noise. That was a little bland and random, but we are kicking off the peak point of sports season, which means that you have hockey has already been started. College hoops has been kind of getting their ball rolling. You got NCAA basketball getting ready to make its return, so that should be always a blast. And we got the NBA started up. So yesterday was when I say sports plans things out in odd ways, this was an unplanned yet planned event, because game 1 of the World Series and the first game of the NBA season both were in Cleveland. And it was even more coincidental for Cleveland because Cleveland, the Cavaliers, were doing their ring ceremony. And I'm going to talk about this because it's not going to be, I'm going to make sure I remember to add it as a topic, because I'm going to likely listen to this podcast and give some, make sure I don't miss anything that I do address. But they decided last night to give they do the ring ceremony. And the rings that they had created were unique because on the back of the ring, it showed how Cleveland came back from 3-1, and it showed each of the red little marks, or the red rubies, I'm guessing that's what they were, the jewels that they put on the back of the ring to symbolize that they came back from 3-1. So big shouts to Cleveland for doing that, and that was a smart move on the designer of the ring. They did the hoisting of the banner and all those things, and that was a joy. And then of course basketball was played, and sadly enough they were playing the Knicks, so the Knicks did not really bring it in this game. The final score was 117-88, and the unique part of the conversation of why I'm sharing it the way I am is because it was LeBron's first game of the season, and he had a triple-double, like easily. He was kind of on pace for it in the first half, but second half came along and he didn't really have much to do. I think he had 7 rebounds and 7 assists going into the second half. So, I mean, point-wise, he's going to get his points. You can't, unless he's just having an off game, he's going to get his points. So you kind of got to almost accept that for what it is. So, yeah, the Knicks played Cavs. Derrick Rose had speed, but he's kind of still working to get in the groove of the system. It was pointed out in the dress that he's still trying to adjust to the triangle offense, which, I mean, it's kind of odd that it's going to be a tough scenario only because Jeff Hornacek came from Phoenix. He never played for the Bulls or for the Lakers, but he's played against the Bulls, so he knows the triangle offense as far as how to run it and set it up. And then of course Phil's going to kind of present it to him as to how to do it since he's in the background doing whatever. So I wanted to at least address that matchup. The Blazers played against the Jazz. Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard came to play in that game, and it was shown when playing against the Jazz. They only lost by 9, so that wasn't too bad. The game that I'm going to talk about is the hype of the quote-unquote super team, because everyone's looking at it like, oh, Golden State built the super team, and they're trying to build a team to win. But they made something clear, and someone said this last night on, it was somewhere I was reading this, and it's a true statement. Golden State is not playing for the regular season. All they need to do is get a spot in the regular season. Get a spot in the playoffs, and they'll let everything else kind of happen. Golden State got beat by the San Antonio Spurs by 29 points. Tim Duncan is retired. Ginobili is in his 15th year, and Parker is in his 16th year. So enter Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, Pau Gasol, and the supporting cast. So they have the tools in place to pretty much... San Antonio is always going to be a 50-win team, whether you realize it or understand that, however you want to put it or however you want to present it. But they beat the Warriors by 29. And the thing that I'm going to see as being the make or break for the team, and anybody who watches them play will notice it, is they don't have an inside presence. Number one, you don't have it. Two big things that are affecting them right now. They don't have an inside presence, and there are 4 players who want to score, or 4 players who feel like they got to get theirs, which means Steph got to get his because Steph's the alpha. Durant is going to feel like he has to get his because he's an alpha. Klay Thompson doesn't really have to get his, but if he gets involved offensively with a couple of jumpers here and there, then that helps. And then Draymond Green is an offensive factor in a small way, but he's still an offensive factor. So you can't leave him out of the equation by a long shot. So I think we have to really understand how this team just being built on paper is not the opportunity or the obvious of, oh, they're gonna win so many games and they're gonna get a number 1 seed. If they don't get a number 1 seed, I don't think it's gonna be the end of the world. There's no need in pushing for the 73-9 or 74-8 or whatever you want to look at. I think for them, they need to focus on getting the chemistry, because you can't really get chemistry during the regular season. I think as a sports fan, it's obvious and it's clear that that's something you kind of build and earn and gain over time. So once they get that in place, then I feel like they'll be able to, work on some things. And I'm sorry, I don't want to deny it, because I have a friend of mine who feels like I neglect the Cleveland fan base when it comes to sports. The Indians did, I don't know, they blanked, I guess is a good term, but they beat the Cubs 6-0. Their starting pitcher for that game was pretty dominant. Now I'm gonna admit, I'll say this because I always like to be on scene with saying certain things. I was asleep for a lot of yesterday because I was on my little relaxation phase. But long story short, wasn't a bad sports night as a whole for starting off the NBA season. But you only got you kind of get as they call it, a little taste of some basketball, and then once you get into the season, you get some more games under your belt and more to talk about. So we'll be looking forward to it. I'm not going to do night after night of games. What I'll probably be doing, because next week will be, obviously it'll be every team will have played their games, and I'll kind of go over and look at evaluating how teams look, what they have, what they are missing, what they need, what could get them to the next level, things of that sort. So I'm hoping I'll get that in and blend it in with the podcast. So now that I've jumped into that, I'm going to go ahead and chip at my techie /gaming conversation pieces. first things first, the Nintendo Switch I did mention to you all last week will be released in March of next year, which means that it's a new system coming out, and as consoles have learned, or as gaming companies have learned, if you really want your system to stand out or have a big impact in the gaming scene, you'll want to have that color scheme going on. So if you give your viewers or your fan base an option or an opportunity to say, hey, I want to get my system in a different color, it's never a bad thing. Nintendo has always been known for doing this. They did it with the 3DS XL. They did it with the Wii in some aspect, as far as giving you, like, you had the black and white, but you could also get skin colors and things like that. So the Nintendo Switch itself is going to come in core colors, and some of the colors I actually like solely because of how they'll kind of complement it, where it's going to be just your color itself for the system, but then also your buttons, your X, Y, A, B will have its colors as well. So looking forward to that ordeal. Just want to kind of bring that up for a few of my techies and my gamers. They did the Famicom, which was a lot of people may not know, family computer. They brought that as an option. I'm gonna make sure I keep these links to the stories that I'm bringing up now, because a lot of times I usually would just throw stories and just kind of run away from it, and that'd be the end of it. So there's that story. And I don't have this one up, but I was able to watch it over the weekend. Gears of War 4 came out, and I mentioned that in the podcast as well. Gears of War was released. They did a kind of an icebreaker for the game the day it was released, or before it was released, during the pre-release, and then they did a actual invitational tournament with all of the major gaming teams, Optic Gaming, Envious, Complexity, all of those groups, every Luminosity. There were about 8 or 9 teams that were involved in the invitational, probably more, but those I'm giving 8 or 9 because that's usually your amount that you start with. It was kind of your major franchises, and Optic Gaming was able to pull off the victory. They played Team Envy. Envy has a pretty good team. Envy has to work on chemistry, and Envy has to work on closing out matches. A matchup nightmare that I'm looking forward to seeing, but it's going to be interesting that it's being presented, is the I almost want to call it domination, but they have a different term that is known as domination in Call of Duty, but in Gears of War it has a different term, and I want to make sure I get the correct name for it. So while I'm looking that information up, they're looking at making the documentation more known, involving Nibbler, and it's going to be interesting. I'm sorry, ADD is like killing me right now, but I want to find this answer because I don't want to have it, forget, not know, and then tell y'all and not have a clue what I'm talking about. Sorry. Let's see. Hang on one moment. Alright. I just need the name of it. Yeah, okay. Escalation is what it's called. So Escalation, and I'm gonna get back to the Nibbler story. I want to at least explain Escalation. Escalation is, like I said, for Call of Duty fans, it's domination, but it's domination with a twist. And here's why. You have 3 sections. They'll start off as A, B, and C. If it progresses and a team has a larger lead, it turns into D, E, and F. Meaning D, E, and F, if they're all dominated, then the game is over. But long story short, with A, B, and C, everybody goes to the main core spot, owns A or owns C. B is usually neutral. And then you're basically trying to kill everyone on the other team, and when you kill them, they have so many seconds that they're spawned out before they can spawn back into the game. Now, the game goes to 210 points per round, and you have to win 7 rounds, so it's the best of 15. Now, it's a long game, but it's a strategic game, and I'll explain why. If you own all three sections A, B, and C, number one, you'll see a timer that's going to say, you've owning all spots in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you'll own it. If you own all three spots and you dominate the other team, the round's over. If you don't dominate all of the spots, then whoever has the most points based on the amount of sections they've dominated wins that round. So winning a round gives you an advantage, and it kind of tries to give the other team an advantage, but it's all about placement. You have to, the losing team then has the option of placing down weapons on the map for themselves and for the other team. Now, you do have an option of saying, I don't want to place any weapons, I'm just going to leave it as is and we're going to keep it moving. Or you can place weapons according to what your teammates may have as strong suits, whether it's a sniper, whether it's the boom shot, the annihilate. It's different weapons that you can place to help give you an advantage in the game. So that's the main gameplay that was played during the tournament. And I just want to address that. And I know some of you all will be like, what is it? And I'll be like, I need to, maybe if I have the game, so maybe one day I guess that'll be a streaming idea once I can hurry and get the certification and show you all how horrible or how not to play it. But anywho, a few months back, they did a story with a gentleman named Tim McVeigh, no relation to the idiot who did the whole Oklahoma bombing. Let's get that out the way now, because I don't want to have anybody like, why are you talking about someone who did? Not him. This guy's name is Tim McVeigh, not Timothy McVeigh. So Tim McVeigh was involved in a documentary where they talked with him about playing this game that I didn't even know existed, called Nibbler. Nibbler is basically a version of Snakes on steroids, because what you're trying to do is collect these little pieces on the board, and as you collect them, you get, a longer snake. But your objective is to not cross your snake, because if you do, you lose a life. As you go through the game, you get more points, you get more lives, things of that sort. So they did a tournament, and oddly enough, the reason I like this story the most is because they did the marathon or the battle of it at, of all places, MagFest. And a lot of you all may or may not know, but I attended MagFest for the first time this year, and I'm planning to attend MagFest again this upcoming year. But it was an interesting story because they talked about the obsession with the game and how this person, the objective, anybody, and this is an arcade / nerd / gaming / techie tutorial that I'm about to give you. Anyone who plays a video game has one objective or one goal, and that is to have the highest score on a machine or on a system. Now that can go multiple directions, because if you play on your own console, yeah, people can come to your house and beat your score, but it's kind of like hit or miss. Most records or achievement leaderboards are kept through online gaming or through online multiplayer. For instance, in Gears of War, if you're a certain rank, or if you've gotten so many kills or so many wins, they keep track of those stats, and it's all kept online. So as long as you have internet, and as long as nothing happens with the internet, then you have nothing to really worry about. But this guy was keeping a record as far as on his machine with having like the highest score. And he had the highest score, and they initially said he didn't have it. He ended up actually having it. They pulled it away again, and then eventually it was his, and he's been has had the highest score since. So I wanted to talk about that story because it was kind of like, I remember looking at the actual article when they addressed it. So I brought that into the mix. Now I'm going to go into an odd yet weird direction with technology conversation, because this all happened last Friday. And sometimes you want to be selective and cordial in who you have as guests and hosts or topic of conversation with certain things. And Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee was on Wolf Blitzer's show, The Situation, on CNN. The Situation Room, excuse me. And he brought up the topic, or they wanted to address with her about the conversation about DDoSing. And anyone who does or does not know, DDoS means you make an attack on a server by giving it denial of service. So once there's no service or no ability to access that site, it's inaccessible by anyone who's trying to go to that site. And that can affect companies, it can affect businesses, it can affect multiple options. But the lady who was on TV talking about this was not the best person to have. And the reason I say that is because anytime you talk technology, and this is something that I'm still guilty of and I still have to learn and remember whenever I talk about it, is she didn't understand that you have to talk technology on a techie level, which means if a person has never used a computer before, or if somebody's an everyday John or Jane Doe watching CNN, they're not going to know what you're talking about, sitting up here talking about, well, yeah, they had attacks and cyber attacks and this and that. What you end up doing then is scaring people. And sometimes we don't know with technology, when you say the wrong thing, it makes people more paranoid than they already are. Some people already are to a point, because dealing with the type of work I deal with, some people have a tendency to look at it as, why should I keep my money at a bank when it's better for me to just go ahead and keep my money under a mattress, because that way I know it's safe. Okay, so let's make sure I understand this right. Somebody comes in your house, takes everything and takes the money, then it's safe, but then you're worried about electronic transfers when you already are speaking to someone electronically. Something to think about. And I still have that conversation to have at some point about the generation gap when it comes to technology and just understanding or awareness of, or lack thereof, or whatever you want to call it. So she went on and just had like this weird tangent about gaming, and not gaming, but technology and sites being down and stuff like that, which goes into my next topic, which talks about the actual sites that were affected by this massive cyber attack. It was Twitter, Etsy, GitHub, which is known for food. Yeah, I'm random. Vox, Spotify, Airbnb, Netflix, so nobody got to chill, and Reddit. So yeah, that service happened, and it was the hugest ordeal, because what they said and how it was worded is, we've never really seen anything this targeted that impacts so many sites. Typically, DDoS attacks are targeted at individual sites. DNS is like a phone book. This is like someone is attacking the phone company and burning the phone books at the same time. They're trying to look at scenarios and figure out what caused it to occur. Luckily, they were able to get the sites back up and running, but the fact that it occurred was such a big deal. This is a big story, and I'm talking about it in the tech queue solely because we went through a similar situation. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, when there was a big company who went around and just made it their goal to shut out major companies, such as they shut down Microsoft, they shut down Xbox Live, they shut down PlayStation 4. They were trying to go for all of the big targets. And when it comes to gaming, the worst thing you can do is take down gaming sites or take down gaming access for online gaming, because that's most people, as far as how they game or how they get into the gaming, is through technology, through the web. So I want to at least bring that story to light, give it a little bit of story, give it a little bit of flair and everything of that sort. 2 more articles, and then I'm gonna cap it off, because I know I have been going, and I usually don't do podcasts this long, but I had a lot of topics and I didn't want to leave anything behind, because it's just that kind of thing. So AT&T is looking to buy Time Warner for an estimated $85.4 billion. To some people, that may not seem like a lot, but it's going to impact in so many odd ways. And here's why. If you go back last year, year before, because there was such an uproar and an uncertainty of what was going to occur, because Twitch partnered with Amazon. At the time, nobody understood why they did it. It didn't make a lot of sense. Nobody really could grasp the concept or the theory of why would a company want to, why would Twitch and Amazon work out? Is Amazon going to start promoting, games? And so it took a couple of years, but eventually an idea stuck, and it's sticking since then. There are a lot of individuals, myself included, who have not joined Amazon Prime. We have Amazon. Most people have just a regular Amazon membership, meaning if they go online and buy something, they'll buy it, deal with the shipping, kind of go from there. With Amazon Prime, however, you get free shipping for a year on anything that you buy. But you have to, it's going to be based on how you set up the service, because you can do Amazon Prime as a trial, meaning after 30 days, it's going to go live and you actually are paying for the service. So in paying for the service, that means that you're going to take on everything that comes with getting Amazon Prime, and there are also other features behind the scenes that no one tells you with Amazon Prime. So how that worked in Twitch's favor is, if you set up the Amazon Prime membership, whether it was a already used Prime or you're wanting to set up looking to getting Prime, and you also wanted to subscribe to you wanted to subscribe to a streamer on Twitch, it was a win-win situation, because you subscribe to a sub and you're getting the features with Amazon. So that's where the merge comes into play. AT&T and Time Warner, and reading a part of it actually is a no-brainer, because it's a legitimate merger in technology. Majority of the commercials that are done for the March Madness have AT&T in them. TBS, TNT, True TV, just for March Madness alone, it's Time Warner. Those are all Time Warner's babies. Now, granted, Time Warner has other windows and opportunities, but I'm gonna just read a brief part of this so I don't, so I can give you an understanding. The move gives the U.S.'s largest telecoms control over some of the biggest names in movies and TV, including HBO, Turner, and Warner Brothers. That includes rights to broadcast MLB, NBA, and NCAA March Madness games. We'd add, if you ask AT&T, this is a perfect match that mates top tier content with a ton of distribution points. Can easily deliver quality shows over the internet, especially on mobile. And that's another thing. AT&T has internet. So if you get an internet service with, have Time Warner involved with it, then you pretty much can throw package deals together and work out better price ranges than what some companies are offering now. And then also, and this is what I was just mentioning, anytime you have a way of blending or implementing advertising or promotion into what you're doing, that's a win as well. So that's another way that they come out winning in this whole formula if it goes through. So we'll look for that and keep an eye on what occurs with it and see if it actually happens. Because remember, AT&T and T-Mobile went through their attempt to buy out with each other and it didn't happen. But you never know. You never know what may happen. So my final topic, and this one I'm gonna try to be as concise and simple with it, because I'm almost near 40 minutes and I don't want to have a long podcast because that's kind of crazy. But I mean, I've heard longer podcasts, so I don't know. Because this is content that is like not your average or not your norm, but it's still information that some of you may or may not know. But as of the 23rd, October the 23rd, the iPod officially turned 15 years old. Now we can't use the term and saying, oh, it's 15 years young, because the truth is, iPods don't have as stable of a place in the music community as they used to 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I'll say 10 years ago. 5 years ago, you had services streaming, but the streaming streaming was kind of like a low-key thing. You know, with iTunes Music, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Lord Jesus, all of the companies who offer streaming services, 181, 1.fm, digitally imported, Radio Tune, Sky.fm, etc., etc. All of those companies offering streaming services kind of makes iPods legitimate, but not as legitimate. And here's why. When you had an iPod back in the day, the big deal with an iPod was, oh, you got an iPod and you got so many songs, let me listen to what you got. So you'll listen to what they have, kind of can listen to it and kind of delve into it and talk about it or whatever. Well, now services offer those same songs that you're saving just on your device, that you can pretty much listen to them at any time as long as you get a subscription. So you get a subscription and you get the service and you're good to go. Whereas with the iPod, you have whatever amount of songs you're carrying, such as, for instance, I had a 120 gig iPod. Rest in peace, because I don't know what I thought I was doing, but that's another story. Anyway, the iPod is no longer here, but I had the iPod and I carried about at least 3,000 songs minimum at times. But now it's also not really a hurt or harm to not have an iPod either, because in the Apple community, or even in a smartphone community, I'm sorry, I don't want anybody to think I'm lopsided, because I know I'll hear it to the end of time. In the smartphone community, Apple, Android, I'd even say BlackBerry, you can store multiple amounts of data on your phone. So with the iPhone 7, everyone's, they took the earphone, the auxiliary cable away, and it's been like the most treacherous thing in the world. But putting that aside, you have storage options of 32, which if you buy it, you have a problem, 128 gigs, and 256 gigs. And with Android devices, you have the option of being able to implement or add a SD card. If I'm not mistaken, you can put in SD cards and store whatever amounts that you want to have. With my GoPro now, I have a micro SD card of 256. See, I want to say it's either 128 or 256, but it's enough storage where if I'm recording stuff, I don't need to say, oh, I need to get rid of this stuff on here because I'm not going to need this. I need to make space. You have room and you have space and storage to do whatever it is you want to do. So I just wanted to, talk about that, because the iPod was a big deal at one time. I think I owned 4 different iPods, because I had one of the early iPods. I had a Nano. My mom has my Nano. She doesn't really use it, because the Nano, when you charge it, after about 5 minutes, it's dead. I even went as far as having a Zune, which, as we all know, that kind of just disappeared and became a non-existent memory, and mine disappeared, so I guess it was a sign. But we have gone through our fair share of motions when it comes to technology. So iPod has grown and come a long way. 44-minute mark, I already know, I think 45 is my max, so I already got 15 buffered for the music, and I gotta cut it and edit and do all that stuff. So I'm gonna end it here. Thank y'all for listening. I appreciate the time that you all take checking out my podcast. If you're not already following Brate Podcast on Instagram and on Spreaker, as well as on Twitter, also on Facebook, Brate Podcast. So until next time, y'all take it easy, stay safe, be blessed, be positive, and I'm out. Peace.